how do you deal with sexual desires? Well, a couple practical tips that you could think about. One, you often hear about avoiding the occasion of sin, but I would also take it a step further, avoid the location of sin, right? I mean, if you know that there's a particular place or time of day where you're messing up, oh, well, yeah, it's usually, my girlfriend's dorm when her roommate's back home for the weekend and one thing leads to another. Okay, that's the location of sin. You got to avoid that place. Go take her on a date. Go outside. Go do something. Avoid the location where you're weakest. Well, maybe it's not when you're with a girlfriend. Maybe it's when you're by yourself and you're going to bed at night and you just can't fall asleep. Like, for everybody, it's a different time. It's a different place. And I'm not saying you could avoid the location of sin if that's your bed and just like sleep standing up like a horse or whatever. But like, yeah, look, temptations are going to come, but there's ways that we can sanctify those times and those places. And maybe if it's your room and when you're alone, bless yourself with holy water, put up some holy images, when you're tempted at a particular time of day, it's when I come home from school. Hey, instead of locking yourself in your room with your phone or your iPad, go exercise, go connect with other people, spend time with face-to-face interaction with other people. So step number, I would say, you got to avoid that location of sin because it's a lot easier to lock a door when you see a burglar coming than it is to stop an armed robbery already in progress. And so what I mean by that is it's a lot easier to resist temptation if you know when that thing's coming and you can avoid it before the passions are fully aroused. Now, another thing to consider too is that, God is calling us, not when it comes to our temptations, to just avoid the sight of attractive people the rest of our lives. A guy that I love to look at for this is Saint Vitalis of Gaza. Now, this guy is a saint in the Catholic Church who spent all his money on prostitutes. That's right. This guy worked in Africa under the hot sun as a day laborer. And after each day of hard work, he'd take all the money he'd earn and every night bring it to a different prostitute so she'd spend the whole night with him and no other man. But instead of using these girls, he brought them the gospel, prayed with them, prayed for them, told them they could start over, converted a great number of prostitutes, apparently became holy wives and mothers. And one morning, he's walking out of a brothel, this house of prostitution, and a man saw him, recognized him as a Christian, was so sick of Christian hypocrites, hit the guy in the head and killed him. And the prostitute said, well, you don't understand who he was, but it was too late, and he was dead. And historians say that when he was being buried, all these former prostitutes came, processing with candles and lanterns to his grave site to honor the man who saw their dignity when they had totally forgotten it. Now, I'm not recommending you try that as a method of evangelization. I mean, if you're in high school, don't go to your campus minister. Hey, can we raise some money, get a prostitute for the juniors? Service hours. Okay, this is a bad idea. But the point is, the redemption of the human heart is possible. Now, not every saint dealt with temptations the same way. You may recall that St. Thomas Aquinas wanted to become a Dominican priest, but his family wanted to dissuade him from that vocational choice. So they did what every good family would do. They sent a prostitute into his basement with him. Now, St. Thomas Aquinas promptly took a hot firebrand out of the oven and chased her out of the room with that. So if you're ever tempted with your girlfriend, the hot firebrands, they work like a... No, don't do that. But every saint is going to battle temptation in their own way. But in the midst of that temptations, God's grace is always accessible to you. St. Paul tells us that there's no temptation that hasn't overcome you that isn't already common to man. But with each struggle, that God is going to provide a way out. And so no matter how tempting it is, God's always offering us a way out. The question is whether or not we have the love for him and the person that we're with to take that way out and choose love instead of lust.